Hello, well, it's great to be sharing with you our Friday devotion. We're obviously journeying through the life of Jesus as he leads towards the cross, and we are here on Good Friday. And I'm going to be looking at the verses in Matthew 27, particularly at verses 11 to 66. And so it's quite a large chunk of scripture, but it felt so poignant and so significant that I wanted to spend a bit of time reading through it together with you and just offering a few thoughts, because it's rich with emotion, rich with challenge, and really we are witnessing Jesus in his darkest hour. So I'm just going to read the passage for you, and I'd encourage you, if you can, if you've got a Bible there or if you've got a Bible app, to read along with me. And I'd love you to be imagining that you are there watching the events happen in real time. So you might know this story really well, you might have read this 1,000,001 times, or maybe you're coming to this for the first time or for the first time in a while. And I just encourage you to really imagine yourself in the story, in the moment. Like, what do you see? What do you feel? What is the emotion that you read? So I'm going to start from verse 11 of Matthew 27, and I'm going to read all the way through, and then I'm going to pick up a few highlights for you. So read along with me. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimonies they are bringing against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time there was a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with this innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus who is called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What is the crime he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." When Pilate saw he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "It is your responsibility." All the people answered, "His blood is on our hands and on our children." Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into Praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. And then they twisted a crown of thorns and set on his head. They put a staff in his right hand and they knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spat on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. And after they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to be crucified. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots, and sitting down, they kept watching over him. Above his head, they placed the written charge against him: "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." 2 rebels were crucified with him, one on his right side and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross, and if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests and teachers of the law and the elders mocked him. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" In the same way, the 2 rebels were crucified with him, also heaped insults on him. And on verse 45, from noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing there heard this, they said, "He's calling Elijah." Immediately one of them ran and got a sponge and filled it with wine vinegar and put it on a staff and offered it to Jesus. The rest said, "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes and saves him." And when Jesus cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out to the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those who were with him, who were guarding Jesus, saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, "Surely he was the Son of God." Many women who were there watching from a distance, they had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them was Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and Mary and the mother of Zebedee's sons. As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb. The next day, the one after preparation day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. "Sir," they said, "we remember that while he was still alive, the deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first." "Take a guard," Pilate answered. "Go, make the tomb secure, as you know how." So they went and made the tomb secure by putting a seal on the stone and posting the guard. So we've just read through the last few days of Jesus' life, the darkest hours of his life. And there's so many poignant moments in this that it's just not to be missed. In those days leading up to Jesus' execution, the cruelty and the injustice of what Jesus is going through just springs off the pages. As I was preparing this thought for you today, I just couldn't get away from that, just the cruelty that Jesus endured in these passages, in these verses. From verses 11 to 14, you see Jesus enduring these accusations and testimonies against his integrity, against his character, against him as a person. And Jesus, he stands there silent, much to Pilate's amazement. Then in verses 15 to 26, we begin to witness this religious and political injustice as Pilate finds no grounds to execute Jesus, but because of the pressure from the mob and his own self-interest, he theatrically washes his hands of his responsibility to carry out justice in the case of Jesus. I wonder how often do we see and recognise injustice in our world, and we expect those in power and responsibility and authority to act justly and discard these false claims. Jesus bears this burden of an unjust system in this moment at the hands of Pilate. Then in verse 27 to 31, Jesus is then beaten, he's humiliated, which is a prelude to verses 32 to 34 in the barbaric torture and continued mockery of Jesus as he's executed on a cross. You can see this world of hatred and evil thick with words and actions towards Jesus. And then in his final breath, in verses 45 to 55, Jesus gasping for breath, his followers watching on, his friends, his brothers, he's the rabbi, this teacher, prophet, they're watching him die in front of their eyes. And then we have these verses 51 to 56, a seismic shift, the earthquake, the temple torn in two. The people that were around Jesus, the centurion and the guards, just watched and were in fear. They say, surely he was the Son of God. There's a shaking in these verses. After this torment and torture in Jesus' death, there is a shakiness of, was he who he said he was? It's still a question that's raised even in his death. Then there's the fallout. Jesus' body is gathered by one of his followers and put in his tomb. And then the religious leaders hurry to make sure that it's guarded and there's nothing taken. There's a fear that comes even in his death. And then there's this silence. There's a waiting. Sometimes the waiting can be the hardest thing. And Chris will pick up the next bit in his Sunday devotion. I wonder what those first disciples were thinking. Is this it? Absolutely dismayed, mourning, grieving his family and friends in shock and grief. The religious opposition, are they celebrating? I don't know. You see, in this account and in these verses that we've read, we've got this historical account of Jesus' last days. There's more historical evidence for Jesus than any other historical figure. Jesus was this historical figure who endured this controversial accusations, beaten and executed for the things he said about himself and God. But was he who he said he was? Was he the Messiah? Was he the King? Was he God's Son? The indication we see in verse 51 to 66 indicates that he might be. There is still a flicker of hope. There's still that belief that is he the Son of God? But in this Good Friday, we wait in real time, in the time when those experienced it for the first time. There was a mourning, a waiting. For us today, we eagerly look forward to Sunday, to Easter Sunday, to find out the verdict. Was Jesus who he said he was? What's going to happen next? And I'll leave that with Chris to unpack for us. But as we sit and as we wait on this Good Friday, as we've read over those verses, maybe for the first time, maybe for the 100th time, let's just reflect on this moment and wait. Is there good news coming on Sunday? Well, hopefully that's been helpful to you, and I wish you a really good Friday, and please do be tuning in on Sunday to hear the rest of the story as we follow Jesus' journey.